Thank you for joining me for today's Dharma Talk. I hope the service is going well. I'd like to start my Dharma Talk for the adults with Gosandai, which are words from our founder, Shinran. If you could please join me in Gassho, I'd like to share those words with you. Nirvana has innumerable names. It is impossible to give them in detail. I will list only a few. Nirvana is called extinction of passions, the uncreated, peaceful happiness, eternal bliss, true reality, Dharma body, Dharma nature, suchness, oneness, and Buddha nature. Buddha nature is none other than Tathagata. This Tathagata pervades the countless worlds. It fills the hearts and minds of the ocean of all beings. Thus, plants, trees, and land all attain Buddhahood. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab, 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 namandab. In the passage from today's Gosandai, Shinran is expounding upon the usage of the term nirvana and its meaning in a passage from Pure Land Buddhism's master Shan Dao in his hymns of the Nimbutsu liturgy. The term Tathagata used in this passage is an honorific one for Buddha. It's often translated as one who has thus gone, or the thus come one. There's a dynamic implication in this term. Buddha, which has departed samsara, the world of suffering, and also Buddha, who has come to this world to liberate all beings from our suffering. I don't think of Buddhism as selfish, about saving ourselves as individuals. Rather, it's about community, about working together so that we all might find liberation. In Shinran's explanation, he's saying that nirvana, Buddha, and our awakening, our liberation from suffering, is a promise that, quote, pervades the countless worlds, filling the hearts and minds of all beings. Then he says that plants, trees, and land all attain Buddhahood. Wow. This means that we're surrounded by the potential for awakening to seeing the world more clearly, to liberation from our suffering. But oftentimes we don't see it. This source of discomfort is the very activity of Buddha in our teachings. But it's also in our everyday lives that we share with others. I myself feel saddest, most depressed, most hurt when I start to see the world centered around me. This sort of perspective is like seeing a black and white movie or photo. Though the imagery can be beautiful, it can also be harsh and cold, and the information that it conveys is very limited. On this slide, there's a picture of my great-grandpa as a kid. He's the one with the dog. Apparently, his dad, or my great-great-grandpa, was a bootlegger during the Prohibition. Let me make this small so you can see the pretty rainbow. There we go. He was a bootlegger during the Prohibition. The picture is black and white, but I can see my great-great-grandpa and grandma dressed in a picturesque gangster style of the era. He's wearing a long trench coat and fedora, and my great-great-grandma is in a big, luxurious, fur-trimmed jacket. Also in that picture, you can see my great-grandpa and his brother and their dog. They're all standing in front of this old car. I know that cars were rare in that part of Virginia, especially at that time. So he must have had a lot of money and influence. I often wonder what color my great-great-grandpa's or my great-great-grandma's fur coat was. What color was the car? Because that photo only gives me a limited amount of information. Similarly, if we watch The Wizard of Oz, the old film from way back in the day, it starts off in black and white. But when Dorothy arrives in the magical land of Oz, it becomes vivid, as if it's filled with the color and unique characters. This inclusion of color in television was revolutionary at the time, and it introduced a new phrase to society at the time called living in technicolor, which is a reference to the vivid new way that TV viewers were able to see movies and their television shows. Just as eye-opening as the introduction of Technicolor to black and white media greatly expanded the experiences of TV viewers, I believe that when we start to include more diverse perspectives into how we see and live in the world, then it becomes more dynamic, enjoyable, and we start to see things more honestly as they really are. Maybe this is a form of awakening. When we start to only consider our own lives, focusing only on what we feel and experience as truth, then our vision's clouded and biased and unclear, like a black and white photo. However, when we listen to voices and experiences that are different from our own, then not only do we begin to grow and live a more fulfilled life, we have an opportunity to open ourselves to the Dharma in more honest ways too. Dr. Maya Angelou says, "We should all know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color." Living in a diversity of perspectives, which includes races, nationalities, genders, sexualities, abilities, and modes of thought, can enrich our lives. But we have to also find value in each of these perspectives. It's one thing to find a means of coexisting with those who are different from us and treating them all with equal respect and compassion. However, that's different from opening our hearts and our communities and our own personal perspectives to make room for those differences while acknowledging the reasoning and conditions for those different ways of being in the world. Professor George Dee of Canada, who is a noted social justice, anti-racism, and anti-colonialist scholar, says that inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It is making new space, a better space for everyone. I love this quote because it immediately made me think of the Pure Land. It also challenged us to work hard and utilize our imaginations to create something new and different from the world in which we're living. Diversity is a core value of our Jodo Shinshu Buddhist tradition. Amita's primal vow is the ultimate embrace of diversity. According to the myth of Amida Buddha, when Amida was Bodhisattva Dharmakara prior to becoming Buddha, he recognized the discrimination and inequality in the world, that not all beings were capable of liberation or accepted as they were, which is the very reason why he vowed to establish his Pure Land of Sukhavati, where all beings are ultimately equal. Many people see this story as literal events. And even if some of us find it too fantastical to accept Buddhist cosmology, the core message that all of us are worthy of compassionate acceptance just as we are is something that we can cling to as a part of our values and to embrace as a practice of inclusion and diversity. My hope is that we all see this as part of our Buddhist practice for two main reasons. The first, which I've touched on, is that our lives become much richer and we learn from and incorporate narratives of difference into our own outlook on life. If the Buddha Dharma pervades all beings, even rocks, trees, and land, then there's no place that does not hold the potential to open our eyes to a deeper understanding of reality. This allows us to learn from the Dharma as it's presented from different experiences of race, nationality, religion, sexuality, gender, difference in ability, and so many more ways of living in the world. Practicing diversity and inclusion in our own lives helps us understand the world more clearly. The second reason that I think this is important for our Buddhist practice is that practicing diversity and inclusion is a practice of compassion. Around the world, no matter where we go, folks are excluded, they're marginalized, or experience other forms of violence due to their religion, their skin color, their gender, sexuality, ability, and many other aspects of their identity. Largely, the world sees difference as bad, and so it's very easy to exclude those who are different from our lives. Like many of us, I've experienced what it's like to be excluded for how I look, dress, act, believe, and even for who I love. And it really hurts. Having even one other person love and accept me for who I am is tremendously healing. If each of us practices diversity and inclusion, then we have the capacity for undermining systems of oppression that uphold racist, chauvinistic, and LGBTQ-phobic norms that cause so much violence and suffering for those who live in the world today. As part of his messages in our Dharma school at Berkeley Buddhist Temple, Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto frequently taught us that we're all Buddhas to be. And I think this idea holds a reliable message of hope and ethical behavior, which supports a concerted effort to practice diversity and inclusivity. If we're all on the path toward Buddhahood, then we ultimately share some core values of mutual respect, and that we can all learn from one another. Knowing that we're on this path toward becoming Buddha can also help us to be kinder to ourselves and others through cultivating forgiveness and friendship. Sometimes it's hard to know how to treat someone who's different from us, but I think we can find some guidance in asking ourselves, what is the best way to treat another Buddha to be in these situations? If we're all lotus blossoms in the pure land of bliss, how can we all nurture our unique growth together? In closing, I'd like to express my deepest hopes that we can all aspire to practice diversity and inclusivity by making space for all voices to be cared for and heard within our temple community. We do so with compassion for one another in our Buddhist family, as we all walk the path together as Buddhas to be. This slide is a scan of a painting that I recently did for completing my graduation from the Graduate Theological Union and the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley. It's inspired by my views and understanding of the crucial role of practicing deliberate inclusion and diversity in our Buddhist communities. And it makes me think of the first time that I walked into Berkeley Buddhist Temple. For me, it was an array of beautiful colors, seeing so many different kinds of people and so many smiles on all of their faces. Please join me in Gassho as I share Shinran's words with us once more. Nirvana has innumerable names. It is impossible to give them in detail. I will list only a few. Nirvana is called extinction of passions, the uncreated, peaceful happiness, eternal bliss, true reality, Dharma body, Dharma nature, suchness, oneness, and Buddha nature. Buddha nature is none other than Tathagata. This Tathagata pervades the countless worlds. It fills the hearts and minds of the ocean of all beings. Thus, plants, trees, and land all attain Buddhahood. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Thanks for listening to my Dharma message today. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Please take care.